Hello students, Jinali Shah welcomes you on behalf of Saraswat International Academy. Today we will begin with the last part of our chapter Human Reproduction. So in the previous lectures we have studied regarding the male reproductive system, female reproductive system, gametogenesis, that is formation of sperms through spermatogenesis, formation of the ovum through oogenesis. We have also studied menstrual cycle. We have studied regarding the process of fertilization and implantation in the females. Now today we will begin with the next part, that is pregnancy and the embryonic development. Now as we have seen during the process of implantation that the blastocyst is formed. We know that the blastocyst is a ball of cells. So basically it is made up of a single layer of cells called as trophoblast, and within the trophoblast is the presence of the inner cell mass. Now what happens during the pregnancy and embryonic development? So the trophoblast cells which are present in the blastocyst, they send out, that is they form the finger-like projections, and that finger-like projections are called as chorionic villi. So the trophoblast cells of the blastocyst, they form the finger-like projections towards the outer side called as the chorionic villi. Now this chorionic villi carries the fetal blood and is surrounded by the sinuses that contain the maternal blood. So chorionic villi contains fetal blood and is also surrounded by the sinuses that contain the maternal blood. Chorionic villi are surrounded by the uterine tissues as well as the maternal blood. Now the chorionic villi and the uterine tissues, they become interdigitated, that is the chorionic villi and uterine tissues are interlocked with each other like the fingers between the clasped hands, and they form the disc-like structural and functional unit between the embryo and maternal blood, and the structure formed is called as the placenta. So the chorionic villi and uterine tissues, they become interlocked and they form a disc-shaped structure called as the placenta. This placenta acts as the structural and functional unit between the developing embryo, or you can say fetus, and the maternal blood. Now this placenta, it is a temporary endocrine organ, which means it can secrete the hormones, and it also connects the fetus to the uterine wall through the umbilical cord. So placenta is a structure which connects the fetus to the uterus, or you can say the developing embryo is connected to the mother's uterus through the placenta by the umbilical cord. The placenta is connected to the embryo through an umbilical cord. It helps in the transportation of the substances to and from the embryo. So basically this placenta facilitates the supply of oxygen and nutrients to the embryo. So whatever nutrients are required to the developing embryo, they are transferred from mother to the embryo through the placenta, as well as whatever waste materials like carbon dioxide and excretory materials which are produced by embryo, they are also transported through the placenta to the mother's body, and then mother's body will remove this waste material. So basically placenta is an organ which helps in the transportation of the substances to and from the embryo. It supplies the oxygen and nutrients to the embryo from the mother, and it removes the carbon dioxide and other excretory waste material produced by embryo into the mother's body, and then the mother's body will remove that waste material. As I told you, the placenta acts as the temporary endocrine organ during the pregnancy. and as it is an endocrine organ, it produces the various varieties of hormones. So which hormones are secreted by the placenta? This placenta produces large quantities of human chorionic gonadotropin, that is HCG, human chorionic somatomamotropin, that is HCS, which is also called as human placental lactogen, that is HPL. Apart from that, estrogens and progesterones, which are essential for the normal pregnancy. So, placenta, which act as the temporary endocrine gland during the pregnancy, produces human chorionic gonadotropin, human chorionic somatomamotropin, or also called as human placental lactogen, estrogen and progesterone. These are the various hormones secreted by the placenta. There is another hormone called as relaxin, which is secreted by ovary during the later phase of the pregnancy. So at the advanced stage of the pregnancy, the ovary also secretes the hormone called as relaxin. Now what is the function of the relaxin? So basically it relaxes the pelvic ligaments at the time of the parturition. Now at the time of parturition, the pelvic ligaments, they need to be relaxed, and this will be done by the relaxin. Now students, we need to keep in mind that the HCG, the HPL and relaxin, they are the hormones which are produced only during the pregnancy. If a woman is not pregnant, then these hormones are not at all secreted. They are the hormones secreted only at the time of the pregnancy. And it is the reason that HCG and HPL, which are secreted during the early phases of the pregnancy, they are the hormones used to detect whether the female is pregnant or not. Now, in addition to this, there are other hormones like estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, prolactin, thyroxine. These are the hormones whose levels increases several folds at the time of pregnancy. So, during pregnancy, the amount of estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, prolactin, thyroxine, they are increased many times in the maternal blood. Why they are increased? So, because they are essential for supporting the fetal growth. They bring about the metabolic changes in the mother, and they are also required for the maintenance of the hormones. Why these hormones are increased several times in the maternal blood during the pregnancy? Reason is they are essential for supporting the fetal growth, for the metabolic changes in the mother, and for the maintenance of the pregnancy. So basically this is a structure or diagram which shows the human fetus within the uterus. So this complete red colored structure is a uterus. These are the cavities of the uterus, and within this uterus is the developing embryo. These are the finger-like projections which are villi, and this is the umbilical cord which connects the placenta. Now basically yolk sac, apart from yolk sac, there are other membranes too which protects the developing embryo, and at the end you can see is a plug of the mucus in cervix. So what is the function of that plug of mucus? So basically it seals the cervical canal during the pregnancy. It will seal the cervical canal at the time of the pregnancy. Now what happens to the blastula after its implantation? So the inner cell mass of the blastula are also called as the blastocyst. It gets differentiated into the two layers called as epiblast and hypoblast immediately after the implantation. So the inner cell mass, by the movement of the cells, gets differentiated into the epiblast and hypoblast. So basically the hypoblast is the embryonic endoderm, and epiblast is the embryonic ectoderm. Endo, that is inner layer, and ecto, that is outer layer. So epiblast, that is epi, above, so that is ectoderm, hypo, below, that results in the formation of endoderm. Now, there are some cells which are left between the epiblast and the endoderm, and these cells gets converted into the mesoderm. So the cells remaining between the epiblast, basically it is nothing but the ectoderm, and the endoderm, they form the mesoderm. So we can conclude that inner cell mass, it is differentiated into the outer layer called as ectoderm and inner layer called as the endoderm. And soon a layer called as mesoderm, it develops between the ectoderm and endoderm. So, by the movement of the cells of the inner cell mass, 3 layers are formed. The outer layer is called as ectoderm, the middle layer is called as the mesoderm, and the inner layer is called as the endoderm. And all these 3 layers together are called as the germinal layers. And it are this germinal layer which will be responsible for the development of tissues, organs and organ system of the human beings. So, that process of transformation of the blastocyst into the gastrula, which contains the 3 primary germ layers, by the movement of the blastomeres is called as the gastrulation. So, transformation of the blastula into the gastrula. Gastrula is nothing but the formation of the 3 germinal layers. How it occurs? By the movement of the cells of the inner cell mass called as the blastomeres. So that is called as the gastrulation. Now what is the function of these primary germ layers? So each germ layer, they give rise to the specific tissues, organs and organ system during the process of organogenesis. So basically all the tissues, all the organs and organ systems of the baby are formed from this germinal layer. So now how that is possible? How the cells of the inner cell mass, which are converted into germinal layer, forms the tissues, organs and organ system. So the inner cell mass, they contain certain cells which are called as stem cells, and this stem cell have the potency to give rise to all the tissues and organs. So basically the cells of the inner cell mass, some cells of the inner cell mass are the stem cells, and these stem cells have the potency to form all the tissues and the organs. Now, the major features of the embryonic development at various months of the pregnancy. So, what structures are developed in the various months of the pregnancy? What are the embryonic structures developed at the various stages of the pregnancy? Now, we know that human pregnancy, it lasts for about 280 days. Or you can say 40 weeks or 9 months, and this period is called as the gestation period. Now in human beings, 1 month after the 1 month of the pregnancy, the embryo's heart will be formed, and the first sign of the growing fetus, it may be noticed by listening to the heart sound carefully using the stethoscope. So at the end of the, or you can say after the 1 month of the pregnancy, the embryonic heart is formed, and the first sign of the fetus, whether the fetus is growing or not, can be listened by the heart sound using the stethoscope. By the end of the 2nd month of the pregnancy, limbs and digits are formed. Digits are the fingers and toes. Now by the end of the 12 months, that is by the end of the first trimester, major organ systems are formed like well developed limbs, external genital organs, etc. are well developed. The first movements of the fetus and the appearance of the hair on the head basically are observed during the 5th month. So during 5th month, the fetus movement can be observed and even the head gets covered with the hair. By the end of the 24 weeks, or you can say by the end of the 2nd trimester, the body is covered with fine hair, eyelids get separated and eyelashes will be formed. So at the end of the 2nd trimester, the body is covered with fine hair, eyelids get separated and eyelashes will be formed. And by the end of 9 months, the fetus gets fully developed and it is ready for the delivery. So that is regarding the changes occurring within the embryo during the 9 months. So that was regarding the embryonic development and pregnancy. Now the parturition and the lactation. So basically what is parturition? So it is the end of the pregnancy giving the birth to the baby. So basically it is the completion of the pregnancy and giving birth to the baby. The series of the events that expels the infants from the uterus is called as the labor. All those events which expels the infant which is formed in the fetus, which removes the infant formed in the fetus, it is called as labor. Now during the pregnancy, the uterus, it undergoes periodic episodes of weak and strong contractions. So during the pregnancy also, the uterus will show the weak or the strong contractions. So these contractions which occurs during the pregnancy, they are called as the Baxter-Hicks contractions and they lead to false labor. Basically, this labor does not allow the removal of the infant from the uterus, or these contractions don't expel the infant from the uterus, but these contractions occur during the pregnancy. But the vigorous contraction of the uterus at the end of the pregnancy that causes the expulsion or delivery of the fetus. So students, you need to keep in mind that during pregnancy also there will be the contractions taking place in the uterus. But these contractions which occur at the end of the pregnancy are more vigorous contractions. And it is these vigorous contractions which expels the baby, or you can say which expels the fetus from the uterus. So this process of delivery of the fetus, or you can say this process of childbirth, is called as the parturition. Now, how this parturition occurs? So basically it is a complex neuroendocrine mechanism. So nervous system and endocrine systems are involved for the process of the parturition. So the signals for the parturition, they originate from the fully developed fetus and the placenta, which induces mild uterine contractions called as fetal ejection reflex. Very important. How the signals for the parturition originates. So basically they originate from the fully developed fetus and the placenta. The fully developed fetus and placenta, they bring about the mild contraction in the uterus. And these mild contractions brought by the fully developed fetus and placenta, it is called as the fetal ejection reflex. Now, due to this fetal ejection reflex, which is nothing but the mild uterine contractions brought by the fully developed fetus and placenta, they trigger the release of the oxytocin from the maternal pituitary. So, the pituitary gland of the mother, it releases the oxytocin. Why it releases the oxytocin? Because of the mild uterine contractions caused by the fully developed fetus and the placenta. Now, due to the release of the oxytocin, what happens? This oxytocin, it acts on the uterine muscles and it causes the stronger uterine contractions, and this stronger uterine contractions stimulates the further secretion of oxytocin. Students, are you getting my point? Initial contractions were the mild contractions. These mild contractions resulted in the secretion of the oxytocin from the maternal pituitary gland. Now, the release of the oxytocin will act on the uterine muscles, and these muscles of the uterus undergo stronger contractions. Now, due to the stronger contractions of the uterus, more and more oxytocin will be secreted. More oxytocin, more stronger and stronger contractions. So, this stimulatory reflex, what is the stimulatory reflex? Oxytocin secreted, stronger contraction. Stronger contraction, more oxytocin. More oxytocin, more stronger contractions. So, this stimulatory reflex between the uterine contraction and the oxytocin secretion, the results stronger and stronger contractions within the uterus. Are you getting my point, students? First of all, there is the fetal ejection reflex, which was due to the mild contractions in the uterus. This mild contractions in the uterus is responsible for the release of the oxytocin. Release of the oxytocin is causing the stronger uterine contractions. Stronger uterine contractions are resulting into the secretion of more oxytocin. More oxytocin means more contractions. More stronger contractions means more oxytocin. So, this stimulatory effect between the uterine contractions and oxytocin secretions brings more and more stronger contractions within the uterus, and this leads to the expulsion of the baby from the uterus through the birth canal, the process called as parturition. What is birth canal? The cervical canal along with the vagina, it is called as the birth canal. Soon after the infant is delivered, the placenta is also expelled out of the uterus. Now, normally during the labors, to begin the contraction or to improve the intensity of the contractions, oxytocin injections are given. To bring about the labor or to improve the contractions, oxytocin injections are normally given during the labor. So, that was during the events happening at the time of the parturition. Now, the process of the lactation. Now, we know that the mammary gland of the females, the mammary glands of the females, they undergo the differentiation during the pregnancy. They are more developed during the pregnancy and they start producing the milk towards the end of the pregnancy. That process is called as lactation. So, mammary glands of the females, they undergo differentiation during the pregnancy, produces the milk at the end of the pregnancy. That process is called lactation. Now, this helps the mother to feed the newborn. The lactation helps the mother to feed the newborn. Now, the milk which is produced during the initial few days of lactation is called as colostrum, and this colostrum basically is pale yellowish in color and it is containing the several IgA type of antibodies, and these antibodies are very much essential to develop the resistance in the newborn babies. So, the milk produced during the initial days of the lactation is called as colostrum, which is rich in the antibodies, and these antibodies, they develop the resistance to the newborn babies. So, basically colostrum, it develops the immune power into the newborn babies. Now, this colostrum has less lactose than the normal milk and it has no fat. but it contains more proteins, vitamins A and minerals. Breastfeeding is normally recommended by the doctors during the initial period of the infant growth to bring about the healthy baby. So, breastfeeding is recommended by doctors for the bringing up of the healthy baby. So, here we come to the end of our chapter Human Reproduction. If you have any doubt, you can contact me. The topics which we have covered during these chapters, during this particular chapter are male reproductive system, female reproductive system, gametogenesis, that is spermatogenesis and oogenesis. We have studied menstrual cycle, we have studied the fertilization and implantation, we have studied the embryonic development, we have studied parturition and lactation. If you have any doubt, you can contact me. Thank you, students.